Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I think you've been sufficiently warned, and yet, who can be really sufficiently warned when the warning concerns the advent of the man we call John Zmirak? John, I don't know how to put this, but welcome to the program.
Thanks, Eric. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
You look ghoulish in whatever light you have there. But let me ask you, John. Yesterday, the whole world is talking about President Trump, the theater, the grand political theater of President Trump inviting all of the leaders of Europe to the White House, where he treated them like a group of school kids. It was really a fascinating. It was fascinating just for the theater of it that he brings them all there. Before that, he met with Zelensky. It's still unclear to me what Zelensky was wearing. I guess he was praised for wearing a suit of some kind, but with a black shirt and a black tie, which, ladies and gentlemen, in case you're wondering what I think of that, I think it is extraordinarily tacky. Black shirts, if you have a black shirt, here's what to do. You burn it. Okay. You
Zelensky
burn
was
it.
dressed like one of Mussolini's thugs from the 1920s. Oh no,
Yeah.
he really looked like the drug dealer who shows up with your daughter for a date and you realize, oh my God, we have to move to another city and change our names because my daughter is dating
We have,
An Armenian opium
yeah.
smuggler. And no, anyway, that meeting.
No, well, I was going to say that the whole thing was, again, the entertainment value with Donald Trump. He's the gift that keeps on giving. No matter what he does, there's layers of entertainment and meaning. I mean, first of all, to invite all of the world leaders to the White House, it's like inviting Putin to America, to Alaska. It's a huge thing. This is not normal to invite the leaders to the White House. Normally they meet in some, I don't know, octagon, plexiglass octagon at the base of a mountain in Iceland or Belgium or something. The idea that they all came to the White House is itself big news. I don't know that has ever happened in the history of the world. That, it's one thing to have one leader, but to have them all there. So I don't know how Trump pulled that off. And even that is part of the story, is that Trump, in doing this, clearly he thinks about this brilliantly. He has this idea in his mind that by being able to do this, by maneuvering them, I mean, using Zelensky as bait and saying, okay, we're going to have Zelensky. I mean, he clearly got them all on the page. So well, I'm going to invite Zelensky to the White House and I want you there. Will you
But
come?
I'm concerned. I'm concerned that they are kind of humiliating themselves in return for getting what they want. The kind of stuff that I've seen coming out of the meeting that Trump is talking about seems like kind of a backdoor membership of NATO for Ukraine. Security guarantees of European troops, the warmongers who want us to be in a perpetual nuclear confrontation with Russia. Uh, I'm afraid they're going to get part of what they want, and it's going to screw up the deal. Putin won't agree to it, and another million European Christians will be killed or wounded.
Well,
Remember,
listen, hold on, John. Hold on. Because there's a lot here. First of all, there should never be any question that NATO could include Ukraine. So that's off the table. So how do you get Zelensky and Europe to agree to this when you're saying that they can't be part of
okay,
NATO?
right
You
here,
say to them, look, what do you really want? You want protection. Okay, Europe, not America. Okay, Europe, you guarantee protection. We're going to make this deal with Russia. If Russia says yes, in order for them to keep their promise, you will have to guarantee it. How's that bad?
because they are still our military allies, and I guarantee you, when Trump is no longer president, because I'm assuming he's not going to be president for life. I'm assuming he's going to leave office in 3 years. I hope he doesn't. But I think he will. Um, any future, I'm afraid that most possible future presidents would see an attack on European troops in Ukraine by Russia. That would be portrayed as by our media as there it's an attack on us. They are our NATO allies. We don't need Zelensky and Europe to sign off on this. We need to throw Ukraine and Europe to the wolves. We need to dissolve NATO. It is a suicide pact. NATO serves no purpose unless we were to lure Russia in. If Russia could join NATO and it can be an anti-Chinese, anti-Islamic alliance, that would be useful. Right now, being allied with Britain and France and Germany that are silencing their citizens. Britain is imprisoning citizens who complain about immigration policy. Why should we be allied with Britain against Russia? I'd rather be allied with Russia against Britain.
I don't even know why you're saying we're allied with them against we've got a couple of things going on here. Should we get out of NATO? You and I think yes. We can talk about that in a moment. But what we're talking about now is simply Trump is effectively doing what you want. He is pushing this onto Europe. He's saying we will not. This has to be. You guys have to stand up.
Well, if this is the first step, if this is the first step of saying, okay, Ukraine is Europe's responsibility, and then we continue to disengage from the corrupt, anti-Christian, totalitarian forces, governments that are ruling Western Europe. We disengage from them. If this is part of that, if this is part of liquidating NATO, great. I'm not condemning Trump. I'm telling you, I'm a little concerned.
You're leaping way ahead. I mean,
I'm thinking more than one chess move. I'm trying to think more than one chess move ahead because you have to. Because the deep state of the U.S. that works with the intelligence agency in this country, remember, they caused the Ukraine war. They caused it by forcing Trump out, first of all, by casting Russia as the scapegoat for Trump being elected in the first place, then using Russia as the scapegoat to try to remove Trump from office, then stealing the election and giving it to Biden. That's why the war happened in Ukraine. They are desperate to keep that conflict going so they can continue to scapegoat Russia and just smear Trump supporters like Tulsi Gabbard as Russian assets. The Russia has been used as the demon figure by the American left and the rhinos. It has been used as the devil figure for the last 10 years. They use it the way Hitler talked about the Jews. They talk about the Russians. We have to remember that. They want to keep playing the Russia card. They want to keep making trillions of dollars in defense contracts. They want to keep out Russian oil and gas so they can import more expensive oil and gas and get rich from it. Have you ever had Mike Benz on the show? Mike Benz explains how these European leaders, these NATO leaders, personally get rich through companies like Burisma by cutting off Russian oil and gas and so that they can bring in more expensive oil and gas elsewhere. It is an unbelievably corrupt arrangement. Trump is doing his best. He's behaving heroically, trying to get out of the tar baby that is the corrupt NATO alliance.
Well, I hope so. But I mean, you must realize that there are political realities. And it's just like with Putin coming to Alaska the other day. You have to play a game. You can't say he's evil and pull out a gun and blow his brains out, which we would all sort of prefer.
I would not prefer it. I would prefer that Trump arrested these Western European leaders and put them on trial for their crimes against human rights. I'm being that clear. Keir Starmer is turning.
You keep changing the subject. I like everything you're saying, but I want to get to it in turn. What I was making just a larger point that if you're dealing with political realities, when Putin comes, for example, you can't do what you want. You have to play a game. You have to roll out the red carpet. You have to pretend you like him. You have to flatter him. Why? Because you want him to do certain things. And so you're trying to do whatever you can to get him to do those things. That's the goal. That's the deal you're looking to make. Simultaneously, with the folks in the EU, Trump could, I hope, wisely knows everything you just said and I am thinking, but now he's playing a game where he has to get them to take on the responsibilities. Like, you want to support Ukraine? Okay. I'm going to now maneuver things so that you do it. In other words, it looks like I'm doing what you want me to do.
Yeah,
Okay, we're making peace, we're doing all this, we're conceding this, but now in return, you need to take the ball. So he is basically washing our hands of the whole thing. I mean, he gets to play peacemaker. He's the guy that put it together. But at the same time, he is saying, this is on you. America is not going to put boots on the ground over there. If there's a problem, it is your problem. That is unprecedented. That's an extraordinary thing. That's already him distancing himself from the neocon post-war NATO alliance, right? I mean, it's a positive step.
Yeah, it is. We just have to keep.
Well,
I hope that the Russians see it that way and that they make a deal.
okay, hang on, folks. We got much more coming up with John Zmirak. Welcome back, folks. Talking to John Zmirak. That's Z followed immediately by an M. Zmirak. John Zmirak. Okay, John, you and I agree wholeheartedly, and we rarely talk about this on the program with you or anyone. The European leaders, those nations, are so politically far from what we, the people in America, believe in: free speech, freedom, basic Christian values,
Religious freedom,
religious liberty, that something has happened since NATO was formed, since the end of World War II. Over the decades, they've drifted farther and farther and farther and farther away. So they're right, they're in bed with like Obama and Susan Rice and the person formerly known as Joe Biden.
by European standards, Joe Biden is center right, and Donald Trump.
Well, you can't even talk about Joe Biden because he didn't even exist. The people running him, but I guess the point is, when I have gone, for example, to London, I was in London in July. I was in London in February, and I was in London last year. And when you go there are, I can't remember, it's a main street in London. The pride flags, if you saw it, you would gasp. I gasped. There was pride flags. It was like if there was a Nazi rally and Hitler was coming down in his motorcade, the swastika flags, the Nazi flags, would be like this. It would be a riot of color to celebrate what we believe in. And I have to tell you, that's when I realized how bad things are in Europe. France is the same. Germany is the same. They are all basically addicted to this woke idea. We don't need to get into it, but the point is, and the point you're making, and to some extent, J.D. Vance made this point in Munich when he gave his speech, our values are no longer the same. And unless you, Europe, change, we no longer have the alliance that we once had. And so something good is happening, because we, at least, that the first thing you need is an American administration that understands this. And J.D. Vance put this really very, very brilliantly when he said it in Munich. I don't know how many months ago that was. But so I see positive signs from Trump's administration.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm not throwing stones at President Trump. I'm simply, Trump's getting a lot of pressure from the deep state, from the Lindsey Grahams of this world, to keep the corrupt post-war alliance going. But we are not, these are not the allies they used to be. The regimes that run these countries are the enemies of their people. They're colonizing the countries with Muslim immigrants and imprisoning anyone who criticizes it. J.D. Vance went to meet with Nigel Farage a few days ago to talk about the end of free speech in Britain. There are hundreds of British people rotting in prison for going on Facebook and saying, well, I think it might be a bit too much immigration. Chat. They're in prison now. And they let Muslim rapists and thugs go to make room for the British citizens to imprison. Britain is not a free country. It is not. It is an anti-Christian country. They just arrested a woman for praying silently outside an abortion clinic, for standing there. She confirmed she was praying. They put her in jail for the third time. These are not countries that share our values. They share our values less than Putin's Russia. They are no freer than Putin's Russia. They conspired with our deep state to bring down President Trump. They are they are not quite enemies, but they are certainly not friends. And the idea of the U.S. allying with these people to fight the Russians is insane. It is time for us to wind down and get rid of NATO, which Pat Buchanan said and I said back in the early 90s.
Well, I mean, again, I've never understood how we needed NATO when the Soviet Union fell apart. Suddenly, the whole reason for NATO, I mean, even when I hear people talk about the West, what West are you even talking about? How is Russia presented as though it's the Soviet Union and we are the West, the Allies? You know, it's like D-Day. It's no longer 1944, folks. I don't know what in the world we're talking about. Anyway, we're getting a little far afield, John. Forgive me, but I'm so interested in this subject. And I listen. I don't get the idea that many people are talking about this. I mean, this is a program we talk about a lot on this program. We often talk about current events, but this is not like Charlie Kirk's program or where we talk about all kinds of things. And I wonder if all of my MAGA conservative friends are talking about this the way we're talking about it right now, because this is at the heart of it. You said that these nations in Europe are anti-Christian. That is correct. They are as anti-Christian as the Obama and Biden administrations. They are viciously anti-Christian. And everything that goes along with that, it's to be anti-Christian really is to be satanic. It's to be globalist. It's to be every bad thing against liberty. And I just sometimes wonder if all of our conservative friends perceive this and are talking about it in the way that we're talking about it. We're going to go to a break.
Yes.
Just 10,
I think
10
increasingly
seconds.
the MAGA movement wants nothing to do with these traitorous governments in Western Europe that are waging war against their own people and replacing them with Muslim colonists.
Or better yet, we want MAGA movements in every one of those countries. When we come back, maybe we'll talk about that, because there is at least hope along those lines. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks. Talking to John Zmirak. John Zmirak, before we leave the subject entirely, there are signs of hope. Meloni in Italy, a sign of hope in Europe.
Tommy Robinson in Britain is the sign of hope.
Tommy Robinson in Britain, Nigel Farage to a lesser extent.
Marine Le Pen in France. Look, there's a great magazine, The European Conservative, and they ran an article a few days ago. In every Western European country, the parties that used to be dismissed as far right are surging, are leading, are becoming the most popular parties. What you're going to see is the European secret services try to ban those parties, try to arrest the leaders. They already tried to imprison Marine Le Pen in France. The dictatorial governments of Western Europe are going to try to imprison the opposition. That's what's happening. They are going to treat people like Nigel Farage and Marine Le Pen the way the Polish government treated Lech Walesa. That's the lens through which we have to see this, that these countries are occupied by hostile, tyrannical regimes, the way we were under Joe Biden.
Yeah, and Obama. I think
but especially Biden, because he got in by a stolen election. Obama was at least honestly elected. And their secret service agencies are as corrupt and as politicized as the FBI was under Merrick Garland. It's a strange turn of events. When I was going to be passing through London in June as part of our cruise, I was genuinely worried about getting off the plane in London in case they read my posts, my columns. Will I be arrested as an extremist? I was genuinely worried whether I should not fly through London. That is crazy that you even have to think about that. But I did.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I read the other day that a lot of these quote unquote far right parties in Europe are polling well, that things have gotten so bad over there that Marine Le Pen in France, Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, and others in the UK, there is hope. It
We
is
need to
interesting.
pray. We need to pray because Europe is occupied by enemies of Christ the way it was in 1942. Uh, it's just that starkly true.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Well, there's so much I want to talk to you about. You want to talk about election fraud? I mean, the fact that Trump yesterday posted what he posted, I mentioned that in the opening segment about, we need to end election fraud. It's sort of like, it's so crazy. It's like, I remember I was in the room, I don't know, 4.5 years ago when Ron DeSantis said, in Florida, we're going to have a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and everybody cheered. And I thought, wow, like we're cheering. It's just so funny to live at a time when the president says we should have fair elections, and this is news.
Oh,
But
it's not
on the
just
other
news.
hand,
It's
it's
not
good.
just it's not just news. It is a ticking time bomb. Pray for President Trump's safety in the next few months because going after election fraud, that is the nuclear football of the deep state. The ability to steal elections through mail-in balloting and corrupt election machines is what our elites use to hold on to power. You've had David Clements on. He's got this wonderful film, Let My People Go. He documents how it isn't just the Democrats that steal elections. The rhinos, the swamp Republicans, they use the election machines to steal primary elections from conservatives. That's why they are against fixing election fraud. Whenever you see a Republican who supports the voting machines, who talks about we need to do early voting, don't worry about the voting machines, that person is part of the problem. That person is part of the establishment. They steal the primary elections from conservatives.
Right.
We need to get rid of all vote counting machines. It has to be done. Paper ballots, same day voting, hand counts. Those are the only things that are going to guarantee fair and free elections in America. And if we do that, the left will never win another national election. And conservatives will start winning primaries. That's why the establishment, Republican establishment, cooperates with the Democrats to keep elections corrupt. That's why Fox News settled with Dominion and fired Lou Dobbs and affirmed that the 2020 election wasn't stolen and demonized it. That all the January 6 people, what did they go to prison for? Protesting election fraud. Why is Tina Peters, an honest election official, still in prison in Colorado? Because she documented election fraud. This is the nuclear football. This is the most important issue to the left and to the swamp Republicans. Trump needs to put all his energy into fixing election fraud and deporting illegal immigrants and of course, fixing the census and redistricting. We can save America from turning out the way Great Britain is turning out, which is a corrupt autocracy colonized by foreigners.
Correct. I'm going to score that one correct. Thank you. Seriously, this is so important, John. So what is it? Do you have anything to say about the quote unquote gerrymandering that's going on?
We are trying to fix some of the gerrymandering that the left has done. And the left does it all across the country under the pretext of minority representation. There's a case going to the Supreme Court, and it's hopeful that we might see an end to the corrupt use of the Voting Rights Act to guarantee far left-wing districts. Right now in Louisiana, there's an election district that looks like a diagonal stripe across the state in order to get as many black voters as possible to guarantee one far left-wing black congressman from Louisiana. The pretense is that unless you can get someone in Congress who looks like you and shares your ethnic background, you're not represented. So that's why we have nut jobs in Congress like Yasmin Crockett and Al Green from Texas, just radical, crazy leftists, because they draw these crazy election districts in order to get the most left-wing Democrat possible because of their ethnicity.
Al Green from Texas, who was thrown out of the State of the Union address, he looks like the Wolfman in transition.
See, I think he looks like one of those hideous Aztec gods. who you see on the walls of a temple in Mexico City. But we can agree.
No. I think that would be to flatter him. I think those Aztec gods are far more. They're far less hirsute. Okay, we'll be right back talking to John Zmirak. Welcome back, talking to John Zmirak. John Zmirak, do you have any thoughts on? I don't know how to put this. Tucker Carlson had an Orthodox nun on the program, and she seemed to be an apologist for, I don't know, the Palestinians. Let's put it that way. It was a curious thing. Then it came out that she is the sister of George Stephanopoulos, which makes sense because George Stephanopoulos' father was a Greek Orthodox priest. I knew him or met him. And then I unkindly pointed out that this nun had was flagrantly appearing on the program with a mustache, which, by the way, mustache is facial hair. People don't know this. It's not an inborn thing. It's an option. You don't have to. For example, if you look at me, you'll notice I have chosen not to have facial hair. That's a choice. It's not a choice made by my DNA for me. So if you mention somebody's facial hair, you're not criticizing anything inherent about them. But do you have any thoughts on those conversations that Tucker's been having with people?
Yeah, multiple things can be true. We do not live in a world of perfect black and white. It is true that Christians are sometimes mistreated in Israel by far-right Israeli nationalists. And it's true that the Israeli government doesn't do enough to protect its local Christians from its far-right nationalists they call the settlers movement. That is true. That is unfortunate. That's something we should put pressure on the Israeli government to
hold on. I agree with you. That's true. The question is, why do you think it's true? Why do you think Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't do more about that? In other words, it seems to me that he ought to be all about, if we're talking about Israel as they're our ally, they're the only democracy in the region. You would think that religious liberty would be at the heart of that they would understand this. Why is Netanyahu not cracking down on the far right Israeli settlers who hate Christians? Why would he not understand that?
Well, first of all, they're a key part of his governing coalition, and he has a fragile government coalition. Secondly, we just said that Britain and France and Germany treat Christians terribly. Israel treats Christians arguably better than Great Britain does. Right? What we're looking at is an anti-Christian movement all across the West. And in Britain is officially a Christian country. It's officially has a Church of England, yet it treats Christians as badly as any of these Israeli settlers. So it is true that Israel ought not to allow settlers to attack Christian Arabs on the West Bank, which has happened recently. That is true. What's also true is that Christians are infinitely worse off in virtually every Muslim country on earth, except maybe a couple of the Gulf Emirates. Christians in Muslim countries are treated so much worse than you could possibly imagine any Christian being treated in Israel. So I think it's cynical on the part of apologists for the Palestinian national cause. They cite these genuine incidents of mistreatment of Christians in an attempt to dismantle our support for Israel. Israel's in a very difficult and dangerous political situation. I hope they make wise choices. We ought to be giving Israel wise advice. We can't back everything the Israeli far right wants because it's not good for the world and it's not good for Israel. We should not, like, if you were Napoleon's friend, you would tell him, don't invade Russia. Being Israel's friend, I would tell them, don't annex Gaza, don't annex the West Bank. It's going to end up hurting you. There needs to
be. Sorry, John. We're going to a break. Much more with John Zmirak and others in hour 2. Stick around. Welcome to hour 2. I continue speaking with our friend John Zmirak. John, we were just talking about Israel and George Stephanopoulos' sister, I believe. I haven't confirmed this, and I'm
No,
not
no, it's confirmed.
joking.
It's
It is
confirmed.
confirmed that it's
Uh,
actually his sister. Okay. So he has a sister who's an Orthodox nun in Gaza. Of course, there are Greek Orthodox nunneries and monasteries in the Middle East. Obviously, I know that there are Greek Orthodox priests in Bethlehem. So she was on his program, and she was giving the other point of view, I guess, this idea that Israel does not treat Christians well. But I guess my larger question is, Tucker seems to be banging that drum. It's
yeah.
the only drum he's banging. He doesn't speak in favor of Israel. He's had all kinds of people on his program, it seems to me, to criticize
He's
Israel.
also not more important to me, I don't see him bringing on people talking about the abuse of Christians in the Muslim world, which is infinitely worse. Hundreds of Nigerian Christians slaughtered by Muslims just the last few weeks. The persecution of Christians in Pakistan, uh, the ethnic cleansing of Armenians from Azerbaijan. I wish that Tucker would be even-handed. If he's really worried about the mistreatment of Christians, the Muslim world could keep him busy every single show. So we do as Western Christians need to be concerned about Christians everywhere. And one thing that was deplorable was the Iraq War. So most American Christians supported the Iraq War, even though they were warned it would lead to the persecution of Christians. And indeed, it led to 3/4 of the Christians in Iraq being ethnically cleansed. Syria, uh, the government of Syria, the neocons were pushing for the overthrow of the government of Syria by rebels allied with Al Qaeda. John McCain said, "Oh, they're moderate rebels." Now they're in charge, and they're killing Christians, they're killing ethnic minorities, they're behaving exactly the way Tulsi Gabbard and I warned that they would. Christians need to be looking out for their fellow Christians all around the world. We should support Israel because it is a logical ally and its cause is just. But our first concern should be for American foreign policy interests and the protection of local Christians and protection of our allies like Israel. We need to balance all these concerns. And the Israeli government should know that American Christians are concerned. We are concerned about the fate of Palestinian Christians. They need to factor that into their decisions.
Yeah.
We aren't pushing hard enough. I think far too many Americans don't think of Christians in these other places. Well, they're not really Christians, they're Orthodox or they're Nestorian. They're weird kind of heretics, and they pray to statues and they have icons. They're not like me in my beautiful mega church with air conditioning and a drum kit and big Marshall amplifiers.
Okay, now, John, we just have 5 minutes. The other day, I mean, I've really been so disgusted with Candace Owens. I don't know why. Like, she's just, the other day, for example, she goes on this thing about how the Star of David, if you really drill down into the secret Gnostic knowledge, you'll discover that it's not, it's an occult symbol.
Okay,
So she seems to feel the need to say that the Star of David is an occult symbol, which of course implies dark stuff, that there's something dark, spiritually dark about the Jews. That's the implication. That's right. The clear implication when you say it's an occult symbol. Look into it. It's an occult symbol. Say, okay, so you're implying that there's something creepy and dark and satanic about the Jews. That's the implication. So to me, it's at least in bad taste, at least in very, very, very bad taste. But you, the other day, were telling me about the reality of whether it's an occultic symbol.
Okay, so the Satanists take symbols from Jewish and Christian tradition and they invert them, they twist them. You see Satanists use the inverted pentagram, okay? That's a symbol you can, if you take the Star of David and you draw inside it, you would get a pentagram. Satanists turn it on its head to represent evil, okay? But the pentagram, the upright pentagram, is a symbol from Christian history. If you go to the stained glass windows of every cathedral in Europe, they have the upright pentagram. It's like seeing that Satanists use the inverted cross, the cross turned upside down, right? They do that in order to deny Christianity. They turn the cross upside down. If you were to see that and say, "Oh, look, see," then when you look at the Christian cross, you say, "See, these Christians are using symbols just like the Satanists." The point is that symbols have meaning. The Satanists invert them and pervert them, and then goofy ignoramuses like Candace Owens say, "Oh, look, symbols. See, symbols? That's a cult." So I guess the cross is a cult because when you flip it upside down, the Satanists can use it. But this is just gutter filth, conspiracy, ethnic hatred that she is channeling. I think there is deep-seated anti-Semitism in many sectors of the Black community, and has a long history behind it. And
It's funny you say that. I know that that's true of the Black community. I know that it's true. I said this yesterday on the program of the Greek community. There are many Greeks that uniquely hate the Jews. And then you being a Catholic, you know that there are Catholic fringe groups. Mel Gibson's father, it seems to me, was very invested in one of them. And I suspect that Candace Owens is hanging out with people who are hanging out with Mel Gibson's father's group. I don't know the name of the group.
When groups of people have to coexist for 2,000 years, grudges can pile up. And there can be fault on both sides. There can be long, deep-seated grudges. As Christians, we need to renounce these grudges. We need to renounce these quarrels. We need to forgive. We need to try to put forth the love of Jesus Christ and draw people towards him and towards his cross, not nurse petty grudges from hundreds of years ago that we can look up in European folklore. And I think all of this is the devil's attempt to keep people away from Jesus by making Christians obnoxious and making them hateful, and thereby driving people away from the gospel. And so we need to we want no part of that of the devil's plan to alienate people from the gospel.
We just have another minute or so, but wasn't Mel Gibson's father involved in a Catholic group that was particularly anti-Semitic?
Yeah, he was. And it's unfortunate, you know. My mother wouldn't get out of the car in Chinatown because of Pearl Harbor, because she made no distinction. He said, "I don't trust those people. They all look the same to me. I have nightmares about them. They eat cats." Well, I don't want to be judged by that. I want to be able to go into a Chinese restaurant and order chicken, meow, no more, and not be judged by my mother's biases. And so I'm not going to judge Mel Gibson based on his father's.
Oh, no, I'm not judging Mel Gibson. I'm not even judging his father. I'm just looking for clarity because sometimes, listen, people say crazy things, but it seems to me that there are that there are places among hardcore Catholics where you see this. And I know that Mel Gibson's father was guilty of that in Mel Gibson's Drunken Rant 15 years ago.
There are now hardcore Protestant groups running around promoting anti-Semitic things. It is a temptation from the devil, and we can't fall into Screwtape's clutches. And we have to be vigilant. We have to be vigilant that we practice the virtue of forgiveness, which Jesus preached from the cross. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. It's not easy.
It's not easy, but it is commanded by Jesus, and it's not extra credit Christianity, ladies and gentlemen. So, man, there's so much more I want to talk with you about, John. I know we're both out of time. Very grateful for you, my friend.